Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul ukdeden min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuh. Inshallah everyone is doing great. And inshallah we will continue with the 20th word. And we will continue with the part titled A Significant Point and Important Mystery.
By describing under the title of the teaching of the names, all the attainments of learning and scientific progress and wonders of technology, which man manifests through his comprehensive disposition. This wondrous verse contains the following subtle and elevated allusion. All attainments and perfections, all learning, all progress, and all sciences have an elevated reality which is based on one of the divine names. All attainments, all imperfections, all learning, all progress, and all sciences have an elevated reality which is based on one of the divine names. On being based on the name, which is concealed under numerous veils and has various manifestations and different spheres, the sciences and arts and attainments find their perfection and become reality. They are not some incomplete and deficient shadow. For example, engineering is a science. Its reality and final point reaches to Almighty God's names of all just and determiner, and observes with all their majesty the wise manifestation of those names in the mirror of engineering. And for example, medicine is a science, and also an art. Its final point and reality are based on the absolutely wise one's name of healer, and through observing that name's compassionate manifestations in the vast pharmacy of the earth, medicine finds its perfection and becomes reality. And I'll just read the final example. And for example, the natural sciences, which discuss the reality of beings, through seeing the regulating, nurturing, supreme manifestations of Almighty God's, may His glory be exalted, name of all wise in things, in their benefits and advantages, and through attaining to the name, and being based on it. These sciences may contain true wisdom. Otherwise, they are either transformed into superstition, or become nonsense, or open up the way to misguidance, like naturalist philosophy. There are 3 examples for you. You may make analogies with these for the other sciences and attainments.
Would you like to read the next paragraph as well? Not just
Okay, yeah, sure. Thus, with this verse, the all-wise Quran strikes the hand of encouragement on man's back, urging him to the highest peaks, the furthest limits, the final degrees, which he is far behind at the present degree of his progress. It points its finger at those degrees, saying, "Forward march," contenting ourselves for now with these jewels. From the sublime treasury of this verse, we close this door.
By describing under the title of the teaching of the names, all the attainments of learning and scientific progress and wonders of technology which man manifests through his comprehensive disposition, this wondrous verse contains the following subtle and elevated allusion. All attainments and perfections, all learning, all progress, and all sciences have an elevated reality which is based on one of the divine names. All learning, all progress, all sciences, all perfections, all attainments, he said, they have an elevated reality, which is based on one of the divine names. On being based on the name, on being based on the name, I guess it means like by being basing on the name, whatever, which is concealed under numerous veils and has various manifestations and different spheres, which is concealed, the name is concealed under numerous veils and has various manifestations and different spheres. The sciences and arts and attainments find their perfection and become reality. So by being based on a name, all these sciences and arts and attainments become reality. Otherwise, according to author, what we do, it's not real.
How so? Like, how do they become reality?
I just rephrased the sentence. I didn't make a comment. I said according to author.
Yeah, I know, but let me rephrase my question. How can we understand the author's comment of them becoming reality?
So you are being moderated. That's great. This final sentence: they are not some incomplete and deficient. Sorry, they are not some incomplete and deficient shadow. So I guess the last sentence also goes to Ayşenur's questions. Like, unless they are based on a name, they are just like a shadow and incomplete. So there's one question, which is what author means when he says the sciences or attainments, achievements become the reality. That's the question. If there's anyone who wants to take the first stab, please go ahead. While you're thinking, I want to highlight one part. He says, all attainments and perfections, all learning, all progress, and all sciences have an elevated reality, which is based on one of the divine names. So I guess he's putting an emphasis there. Like, when we look at these sciences or arts, the attainments, we see different aspects. Like, we see their utility in practical life, for instance. We see how they are used to start a war. We see how they are used to make arguments against the names. Or we see how they are benefit people. So there are all these different aspects. But he says there's also another aspect of them, which is the elevated reality of them, which looks at the names. So this elevated part attracted my attention. So we see all these different colors when we look at the signs. But author says, there is one color which is like a really perfect color, very elevated. This color looks to a divine name, he says. And Asim, please go ahead.
Thank you. So to answer Ayşenur's question about what the reality is, from the text, what I gather is that all the sciences, they are pointing to the names, as Berkan was saying, and as you read. But also I have a few questions also. Why is this, my question is, why is this an important mystery? That's one question, but I'll continue on in terms of all this learning and progress that the author is saying. Man has to make the effort in terms of that learning. So the names and everything is, as the verse was saying, that we have taught, and he taught Adam the names, all of them. So the learning of the names is something that, from what I understand, we have to do, I have to do. But then all the names are there within my being. In terms of the names are what the reality is, they exist. and I have to discover them. That's what I have. My responsibility is. So the learning is whatever the sciences and the engineering and arts, whatever we are doing, we should be actually, the end result would be that they should lead to a name. That's how I understand it, but I also need help because it's very easy to say that they point to a name, but if I know Berkan is very good at that, with giving some examples, maybe you can use something from computer science that would help me, because it's easy for me to find the names in other disciplines in art or in medicine. It's much, much easier for me, but in my field where I have to develop applications and sell that product, it's very difficult for me to find the names, although there are, sometimes I do, but if you can help me more with some examples, that would be great.
Thank you, Azim. I guess you confused me with Yusuf because he's the one who gives elegant examples. He's the example guy.
From computer science?
From everywhere.
I have a computer science example.
So great. So inshallah, he will help us with examples.
I was just questioning what he means by truth of something. So he's looking for truth of a thing, and he says that for sciences, their truth is divine names. And an example that today we were at a cafe with friends, and my friend was holding his laptop, and he asked, "Who wants coffee?" And I thought he was going to bring us coffee over his laptop using it as a tray. So just thinking it this way, for instance, you wouldn't pay $1,000 to a laptop to use it as a tray. The truth of a laptop is to use it properly for whatever your research or something. Definitely,
like a kitten movie.
Yeah, videos, whatever. But definitely the truth of a laptop is not a tray. So along these lines, I guess, so we can rephrase the question as, why would you pay $1,000 for a laptop? Because you need to do your research, whatever, with it, not for trade. So likewise, why would you study computer science? Why would you study medicine, whatever, in the university, giving a good half of your life to this study? What is your purpose? Because it's a big investment we are making in there. So what is its truth? So he is saying that it should be taking you to this eternal thing, which is divine names, so that your investment would make sense. Otherwise, it's huge waste. Half of your life is gone. You're hoping that you're going to earn money. Well, you earn money, but again, money is not free after getting your degree. You don't have time to eat your earnings. Maybe your children will. But anyways, it's not for happiness at all. So what would be the purpose of studying sciences, if we say? Then he is saying that it should be pointing to an eternal source of everything.
I feel like there's a difference between something's aim and the purpose that it leads to, and something changing in such a fundamental way as to become reality. So I guess my question is, why is the author, just going back to what I had asked earlier, why is the author, what does it mean for something to become reality? What is that as opposed to? It's, the laptop is surely not used for its purpose if it's reduced to a tray holder. But even as a tray holder, in a sense, it's still, however you want to define it, it's real. It doesn't transform intrinsically, right? It's just my idea of my perception of how I want to utilize it changes, but nothing about the thing itself changes. But here it seems like there's an intrinsic change going on. So I'm just wondering what is meant for something to become reality as opposed to deficient shadow.
Is reality interchangeable with truth in this context? Because the original one says hakikat, and I don't know if there's a difference between truth versus reality.
Yeah, I mean, I might be getting hung up on the word choice, but
No, I don't think so. I mean, the discussion is not about the word choice, as far as I see.
No, that's not what I'm implying. I'm just curious. Like,
So I guess in here, when he said, there's a little bit of a problem with the translation of last sentence. They are not some incomplete and deficient shadow. It could be better translated as otherwise science would be a incomplete and deficient shadow. So if it is not, if you don't consider it as manifestation of divine name, then it would be nothing but a deficient shadow. So along the same line, if you don't consider the laptop as a research tool, it would just be reduced to becoming a tray for you. So, because for you it is just either a tray or a laptop. I mean, if I don't use it as a laptop, if I use it as a tray, it doesn't matter if it is truly a laptop or not, because for me it's a tray anyways. So I'm not using it for its true purpose or for what it is. I mean, instead of purpose, I would like to say what it is. It is a laptop, but I'm using it as a tray. So instead of seeing it as what it is, I am seeing it as something else, like still like a shadow. Yeah, it is somehow working as a tray as well, but compared to its truth or real value, it shouldn't be used as a tray anyways.
right, then I mean, I can't say it becomes reality, but it becomes a proper representation or manifestation or mirror to reality, right? Because there's a difference between equating it with reality versus saying that it's a reflection or manifestation of it.
Yes, I mean, you would, if we go to tech, I mean, at that level, anything in the existence shouldn't be reality anyways.
Right, yeah.
Because by definition, reality is the absolute. So I guess this part is as it is. But within that context, what is the reality of sciences? Because in a sense, what is the meaning of sciences? What does it refer to? Where is it coming from? So because it is, again, a manifestation of something. So what is this of? What is it manifestation of?
like, what is the truth of like any being in the universe? Or like, what is the reality of any being in the universe? Or another way, what does any being, what kind of truth they indicate to?
That's a good question.
I feel like here, like taking also like the first command of the revelation, read, and the only available thing to you to be read is the like your own experiences and the universe. And here, like the verse talks about, like man has the potentiality to be able to read the names or know the names, and then like author talks about names of the creator. So I feel like he's talking about like from your own experiences and like the creation. He's talking about abstraction of the notion, the notions like just or justice or creator or creatorship. And when you do that, like when you ask the question, okay, I experienced the like order and balance in the science of engineering, all just and determinate that he refers to. So the beings themselves, do they have any kind of intrinsic capacity to show like that notion of justice or the quality of all just, or do they indicate something other than themselves? I think that's what the reality refers to, as far as I understand.
So giving the example of a book, truth of book is meaning. Can we say that?
Not the paper and the ink.
Yeah, or not the horizontal relation between letters, for instance. So if I am trying to describe this text as count of letters or the shapes, color of ink, whatever, this is not the truth of this. But what is the truth of this book? It would be the meaning of the book. Whatever is meant by the book would be the truth of this book. I guess for the existence, what is the what is meant by this existence is divine names. So this is the truth of existence.
Or in other words, in order for us to make sense of the existence, I know we always keep going back to the same thing, but since everything is transient and nothing is able to maintain its own qualities, so there must be something other than the things that is making like the beings change, or like they're constantly being subjected to change, which eventually like must indicate something else. And the process of like going through that like abstraction process, like you see the act, then from the act you see the let's say you see the order, and from the order you understand the justice because you see the balance, and from that like you reach like that there must be someone who is all just, so that like this universe is maintained the way it is. Going through this process with every single quality is the key in this like context, I think.
There are some comments, let me read. From Fariha, she says, "Isn't whatever I experience my reality for me?" Question mark. And then Asim adds on his comment. He says, what I make out of that experience. I guess he is trying to say my reality is what I make out of that experience. And then Fariha responses, she says, yes, so when I read a book, whatever meaning I derive from it becomes real for me, doesn't it? Question mark. So these are the comments, if anyone wants to comment about the comments. There's one thing I want to add, if I'm allowed to. About these sciences becoming reality and finding their perfection. So he uses them together, like he says, the sciences and the arts and attainments find their perfection. So in the current states also they have some value, but they find their perfection when they reach this name and become reality. Become reality for whom, I guess we can ask. I will take it for myself, like they become reality for myself, meaning they will resonate with me. I would say, okay, whatever they say, it's true. I can like a kind of confirm that. I can see what they mean with that. And maybe one example would be like with, let's say, the physical theories or physical sciences. We know that the scientists talk about all these, the things being eternal, the matter being eternal, for instance, or universe being infinite. So I'm not going to talk about mathematical details, so don't look at me with this upset face. But anyway, they see some qualities, right, in the universe. They see some things, do not change. Some things change, but their, let's say, quantity stays same. Or when they try to find a boundary for the universe, they say, no, it looks like infinite, like there's something called infinity, whatever. So with there's such claims, for instance, or such findings, they show us some shadows. They say, there's something infinite, there is something eternal, right? That we see its shadow in, let's say, when we try to study matter. When we try to study universe, we see some shadow of infinite. Or we see some shadows of the absolute, whatever. They name it in different ways, but they see these qualities there. They put these qualities in the theorems and so on, change their names, as Quran says. The brother Ali was using this verse as an example when I was talking about this teaching on names. That was a verse in Quran. I can't remember the exact the text. Please forgive me. But it talks about how people tend to give false names to things. So anyway, like we give all these false names. We say the matter is eternal, or universe is infinite, whatever. But we see these qualities, and I guess when Nursi says they reach their reality and become perfect, maybe it's talking about that, whatever they see, these shadowy things, they will find their source. When we do the science in a right way, in a proper way, we will say that our sciences tells us that there is an eternal one. Our sciences tells us that there is an infinite power somewhere. Our sciences will tell us that there is an absolute being. This is the reality, that they see these qualities, they see these shadows. Once they find the source of these shadows and stopping, giving these false names, attributing these qualities to false sources, like matter, for instance, they will become a reality, because they will find the real source behind, let's say, this eternity or infinity or absoluteness. What we have currently is just a shadow of these qualities, true sciences. For instance, another example, like they say, everything moves. Like from the times of Newton to today, everything moves. Nothing stops almost. In motion, everything is motion. When you don't try to stop them, they always move, like till forever. And when you look from the right perspective, this tells you that everything is in constant renewal, in constant creation. So this is the reality that they should reach, that everything is created anew constantly. But instead, we get lost in the shadows. And we say that, oh yeah, there is a law of motion which tells this and that, and things in motion, whatever. Like X theory, Y theory, things vibrate. But in reality, they should tell us that everything is created constantly. This is their reality. This is the name, for instance, Al-Qayyum, right? They should reach through these observations, but they get lost with the shadows. So, any other comments?
We should ask Asha to see, are you clear with your question? Or do you think that your question is being understood?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the context provided by the comments has helped me further out. So I'm leaning towards more satisfied than less satisfied, though I can't say any absolutes.
There's a silence. Should we continue with the next one?
Can you jump like one step back?
We are already at the beginning. But of course you can.
So like, why is this important in our like daily practical life? What does it really mean, like reaching the divine names? What does it really mean for us?
Reaching the divine names.
In everyday life, like waking up in the morning, opening the window, getting a fresh air, or having the breakfast. So within that context, like what does it, like why is this like very like significant? That's the question. And the comment is, we read that like last week, then you may rise to my Dominican leaves, which are the realities and sources of your sciences and attainments, and you may look to your sustainer with your hearts through the telescope of the names. So we are stuck in this universe, and we cannot get out of his dominion. But yet, we were blown into from his spirit by him, that there is this like constant like burning yearning to go almost like beyond this like this immediate like existence. And how do we really achieve that? Like, so we are created stuck in the universe, but he's absolute, but yet like we want to have that constant connection with him. Isn't that the case of like, isn't that the reality of man and woman? And how do we really accomplish that? Like, how do we really talk to him? And is that really has like anything to do with the text that we studied right now?
I was talking with some people today about mice, and we were just kind of drawing an analogy about, let's say there's like a lot of like a mice society, and they're just kind of fighting each other, and there's like a mouse king and mouse subjects and whatnot. And we were talking if one of the mice became aware of the futility and insignificance of their mice interactions or just aims, then that would be indicative of the fact that at least in its inherent nature, it's meant for something more than what it's doing currently or seeking currently. So along that line, I guess that lack of satisfaction or sense of even sometimes imprisonment, right? Even imprisonment in just our own dissatisfactions, or even the moment I'm satisfied with something, there's always something else that comes after it, and there's another anxiety or another dissatisfaction. Like, it's that transient nature that you were talking about. I guess all of it is indicative towards needs that can't be satisfied within the conditions that I find myself. And I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this, but when you were talking about
that we are all mice.
No, I mean, when you were talking about the science, like what does this have to do with my life? Even if I don't study engineering or medicine or anything, like I deal with these with aspects of these sciences in one way or another in my daily life, right? And maybe the reality of something and the aim of something can't be necessarily distinguished either, because its aim demonstrates its reality, or its reality demonstrates its aim. So in that sense, I have to pose the question to myself, what is the aim of each existing thing in the world? What kind of reality does it point to? Because one way or another, it points to something, and I have to make sense of whatever it points to. Either it points to something meaningless or something more meaningful. But I guess just the fact that it's also within my own existence, I find the need to question what any of my interactions with anything means, whether that be with a cup of water, or whether that be with some biology that I'm studying. Like I think it's just a human question to ask, what is its aim and what does it point to, or what does it mean for me? Just bring some. I don't think that answers anything. But.
Oh, there's one comment from Mohammed Said. He says, this passage reminded me of this saying, in quotes, science will explain the mystery of the universe. Science will explain the mystery of the universe. So this is the saying which Muhammad remembered. The author is almost saying just the opposite, he says. The author is almost saying just the opposite, and in quotes, he's writing his own saying, the existence of sciences being based on the names. For the average people like me, the science is positioned as an explainer. For the average people like me, the science is positioned as an explainer. So, Muhammad, you said you are an average people, like the sentence you write. It's not for average people. So I will try to translate it for average people like myself. Says for the average people like me, we think science will explain things. And not as a thing, he continues, not as a thing needs to be explained. So it says we usually take science to explain something, but author says science itself should be explained by referring to names. Their existence is taken for granted. That is interesting to me, he says. This is an interesting point, yes. So the existence of sciences, it's another mystery for at least Said, Mohammed Said. And he says by referring to some names, science itself is explained. So going back to your question, Osman, about practicality, the way I understand is if you, let's say, study science and say you see that the amount of matter is preserved in reactions, you may think it has some practical value. But as Nursi was saying previously, that would be just waste of time for you. Because you will know that when you go to the grave, yes, your body will be preserved in some form as a earth, as part of the plants or whatever, but you will not be satisfied with that. So it won't be a satisfactory, let's say, a practical explanation for you, he says. But through the same observation, if you reach a name on which these science or observation relies, if you, from the same observation, if you see that the creator preserves things, creator makes things within a measurement, like with measures. With measures, you would say? Yes, with measure. So my Lord is the one who preserves things. My Lord who is the one who does everything with measure, with a measure. If you reach this name instead, then it becomes a practical for you. Because you will know when you have the anxiety of death, or when you have the anxiety of anything, you will know that your Lord preserves things. You will know that your Lord does everything with a measure. So it becomes a practical reliance for you. Otherwise, just a shadow of this reality. So I guess the word name, when you ask the question, I just realized the name is, it's really important. Like he's not talking about some quality, some, I don't know, some names. Because when you say names and when you talk about like a collection of names, it almost defines a persona, like a person. So it says there is someone that that addresses you. There is someone that you can interact, you can communicate when you talk about names. So when you say that all these attainments, art, science, whatever, take you a name, a divine name, it means they will take you to the one that will take care of you, the one that whom you can communicate with. So names, I guess, implies that as well. And when you take it that way, that there's someone, with all these names, which takes care of me and everything else, it becomes pretty practical at this point.
I think, for me, the key point, I was pointing it out last week, and I see the relationship between the text that we study and how to, continue. You may look to your sustainer. You may look to your sustainer with your hearts through the telescope of names. So I'm asking myself, do I use, first of all, do I really understand that statement, what he really means by that? And the other thing is, do I really use my heart to speak to my sustainer? The answer is no. So, names, through the names. So there needs to be some, the famous word, the organic relationship between the names, your heart, and to be able to communicate with your Lord. For example, just being more practical, when you're extremely happy,
do not pause for a long time, because I'm thinking you done. Okay, I'm happy.
Trying to formulate my thoughts as I speak, so it takes time.
Sorry.
And I'm not very eloquent with my speech anyway. And I just lost my thoughts.
You were saying, let's assume you are happy.
Let's assume, you're happy and you feel this joy, or you're extremely depressed in some cases. So, what are you being told? Do we really take is that what he means by heart? With your heart, through the names? And if that is the case, what am I being told through, going through those kind of emotions? Because
I kept myself.
Okay, go ahead.
No. I will not tweet this time. Go ahead.
No, seriously, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. I guess that's the key point of making the connection between all these sciences or attainments and the names. The key point is using your heart. Otherwise, if you just see it as a bunch of calculations, what you do with the sciences, if it is just a bunch of calculations, some inferences, measurements, you add something, you subtract something. Or when you do your art, it is all about your, imaginations or whatever. Then, I guess he's saying that it becomes a shadow. But when you look with your hearts through the telescope of names, as you were saying previously, when you look at the same phenomena, what's going on there, you make your calculations, you make your measurements, but at the same time, you know that you don't want to die. It's not good for you. At the same time, you know that you are anxious about your prosperity of your children. Or you are happy with the love that you experience with your children. When you look through your heart to the measurements, to the calculations, to the observations, then they will take you to the names. Otherwise, all you will see This would be just Yusuf was saying, the number of ladders, or how many, like the amount of matter that was preserved before and after the reaction. And that will be all. Or when you look at the seed or DNA, when you realize the entire future of the tree, the seed, is preserved, coded in the DNA. When you look at it without your heart, or you will see some information theoretical numbers, like the theories or whatever. But when you look at it from through your heart, and see that the memories are preserved there, or the entire life is preserved there. And then when you see, maybe my life also is preserved. Maybe I'm also will be resurrected. Right? When you look at through your heart, then you reach the name. Then you reach the reality of what you have in front of you.
Actually, one important part in that paragraph from last week is continuously raising your head part of it. Because to me, what we do with sciences is we are investigating everything under the microscope. Let's say, even if it is mercy, we just try to split it into pieces and define it. Analyzing means, technically it also means putting into pieces, trying to find its components. So whatever we observe, we just split it into small pieces, so much so that we can explain everything as some simple matter.
Isolating it.
Yeah, isolating it. And then, for example, even if it is something as warm as the feeling of mercy that you observe between cat and kitten, you would just try to put it under the microscope and say, okay, what triggered this? And then you say, oh, it is this hormone. And this hormone is made up of those particles. So everything disappears. Even mercy disappears. It only boils down to a bunch of carbon, hydrogen, whatever. This is why I guess he's saying, raise your head and look at the big picture. Then you will see names. Otherwise, if you just keep always looking at things under the microscope, meaning that zooming into it so much, then you will never understand anything. Same goes with this text, for example. If we zoom in so much to the letters, we will not read words. If we, okay, let's one step back, words, still it doesn't mean anything. Sometimes paragraphs, without seeing and it happens, right? Sometimes we are over studying some of the text, let's say a single paragraph, but we are not able to locate it within the text because, let's say, author sometimes makes a single sentence out of 2 pages. So he's drawing a big picture, and I'm trying to just putting it under the microscope so much that I'm not seeing the big picture, where it is going to fit. Not to say that do not put things under the microscope, but if you always analyze things under the microscope without seeing the big picture, we are very likely to get lost. And this is what he is saying. So be careful in your progress. Do not follow Satan, as if he is saying that this is the satanic part of it. And from the heavens of divine wisdom, fall into the misguidance of nature. Because nature is, well, this is it. I mean, nature means this is it. I'm looking it for itself. But if I see it, let's see the big picture. What does this refer to? Then divine names will start becoming visible for me. Then I will see mercy with my heart. Because in my heart, I know how it feels, mercy. But when I take it under the microscope, it just becomes atoms or molecules.
Should we continue and locate ourselves in the text?
Sure.
Any other comments? Mariam, would you like to say something? Oh, my mistake, sorry. Something else. Right. For example, engineering is a science. Potentially. For example, engineering is a science. Its reality and final point reaches the Almighty God's names of all just and determiner. Almighty God's names of all just and determiner, and observes with all their majesty the wise manifestation of those names in the mirror of engineering, and observes with all their majesty the wise manifestation of those names in the mirror of engineering. Any comments with that?
Engineering must have been the most important science since Mircea talked about it in the first place.
But I'm not sure if she was referring to computer engineering or
Engineering is engineering.
So how you see the names there, all just and determiner? Al-Adil and Mukaddir, is it? All just and determiner. I guess both has kind of like a shared concept of doing things with a certain measure, with a or in right amount, or what is necessary. Let's say you give only the what is expected, not what is necessary, not more or not less. With Adil, for instance, right? So Asim says something. Let me see another funny remarks. Right?
Tell us too.
Sorry?
Tell us too.
No, it's just a smile face kind of thing. Engineering is a science, and it looks at the Almighty God's names of all just and determiner. So as an engineer, how would you reach the name of determiner?
In the original language, the word he uses can be both translated as engineer or geometry.
Yes.
So I guess I would like geometry better in here. I mean, we can take it as such since engineering is based on geometry anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, geometry is like, what's it, this person that sews clothes? Tailor. It's pretty much like tailoring, because let's say you are trying to define a shape, but you're trying to define that shape with mathematical formulas. So simplifying it is a person who is trying to sew a cloth to fit the body of a person. So what does a tailor do? Takes all the measures of this body, so trying to make it so that it's not going to be too strange, it's not going to have extra space, but it should be like a perfect surface that is covering what is inside it. And if you look at your skin, for example, it is very much perfectly covering the body. So that means whoever was covering up this body, this hand, for example, with all its wrinkles and everything, has take so tiny measures so that everything is going to fit perfectly. He didn't waste any skin. He didn't fall short of providing skin. So Adl, or the justice in here, is he is neither making it less nor making it more than necessary, and determining that enough measure and shape and color and everything to it.
And I guess even from a like conceptual point of view, like when you study engineering or geometry, you learn about the concept of being something optimum, let's say, right? Being something being in just amount. Like if you put more weight on the bridge than it can handle, it will collapse. You know that from engineering. And this idea that, the bridge has an optimum level of weight that can carry, yes, that it can carry. This idea of optimum that you learn through engineering, it takes you to the just one. So, like by doing the engineering work, you learn about the just one. Not only through, let's say, the examples you see in the real life, You see, I don't know, that all plant is created perfectly and so on and so forth. But other than that, also this idea of being something perfect or idea of being something just also gives you a glimpse of the just one. Feria, please go ahead. I see you raise your hand.
Assalamu alaikum. So just to, at least what I take away from the author mentioning different sciences or subjects, like everything that we interact with is in a way science, right? Like we can't explain how, like the table is standing here, like the phenomenon occurring. So I know he's mentioning engineering is a science, but anything, like I know we mentioned about geometry or math or whatever, but the name of all just to me, what it means is like perfect measurement of things. So like a mundane thing we may take, like the elevator, right? You know, you just, with the press of a button, right? It comes in, the door opens and here you are, you know, you can go to whichever floor you want to. Like, how is the whole thing happening? Like how really, like, again, we're gonna go into the whole science and physics of it. I don't wanna get into the technicalities, but just like think about it. And this occurred to me like 2 weeks ago. I was stuck in an elevator. I'm like, wow, I take this every day and like, here I am, you know, really taking it for granted, every little move that the elevator is made to perform. And like, here I am, like, you know, it made me reflect on like, even like how everything is like even set up, you know, with perfect measurement, you know, like there's a pulley, whatever, the ropes and everything, like how do you explain all that? So anything we interact with really makes you, first of all, ponder over its existence, which makes you realize, oh man, there's like whoever designed this, like there's like perfect measurement, you know. So the name of all just, at least to me, means like there's perfect measurement into the existence of things, and that's how it's all set up and everything. So it points to, you know, the source of existence of things. So just wanted to share that, if that helps out.
Just as a footnote in general, geometry in turn is based on philosophy, as are all sciences. So it seems it seems like thus that philosophy in its purest form allows us to recognize all these names. I think give credit where it's due to the discipline. Sorry, just needed to add that.
I guess there's also another aspect of, like, for instance, when you do any engineering work, like if I ask you, like, how did you do that? Like, how did you, make the television, whatever, or the car? It's not here. How did you manufacture the car? You would say, that there are some rules that you should follow. There are some amount of material that you should put, and then amount of another material that you should put. And if you put them in the right amount, they will become the car. But the question is, like, how did you come up with such rules? Like, where did they come from? Like, why do you believe that there are such rules? Why do you believe that every time you will do it, it will become a car? I guess then it becomes like, because, whoever is doing these things, he's doing things in a just way. Like if you put things in the right amount, it will become a car, because this is the just way. And without this, the being or the one who thinks in a just way, you cannot explain anything. Otherwise, you cannot rely on any the laws or any rules that you use in your engineering work. Just the existence of the rules already tell you that there's the just one.
And also specifying or emphasizing the names makes me think that, let's say we are having those discussions. At the end of the discussion, we are arriving to some sort of a conclusion. So I guess practically, I should be putting a name as a conclusion and remind myself that all this discussion, let's say, means all just. So that next time when I am walking in the street or when I am thinking about something, when the idea of all just pops up in my mind, it should remind me of this discussion. Because if you remember the supplication of the Prophet ﷺ, in Jawshan, he keeps repeating those names as if behind every word, every name, he has a huge, let's putting into our context, as if he has a huge discussion behind every name. So that in his daily supplication, he reminds himself of those, let's say, discussion to carry to our conversation. So, because otherwise, what I'm feeling like is things are getting lost for me as well. Yeah, it's good to have this discussion. I'm certainly getting things out of that, and certainly it's improving me, but I'm also forgetting. So as a milestone, maybe I should put a name to there. So since he says, rise to, then you may rise to my Dominical name. So rise to this Dominical name. Now start thinking in terms of those names. Because you cannot have this discussion each and every time you are going to think about such a topic. You will pick it up from there.
When you say a name, like are you referring like really name, the word, or are you referring to description, like oh, the one who teaches us, for instance, instead of teacher?
Yeah, like summarizing this concept that you arrived to. Because even in Jawshan, for example, he messenger describes the creator as the creator of shadow. Let's say he notices that shadow is being a very interesting creation, which there's light, and when there's no light, there's this shadow. So definitely thinking about this, he realized that the shadow is also being created. So it says creator of shadow. Now it's a name, it's a concept in which he reminds himself as in the position of, this is what we do in the prayer as well, right? When we go to the prayer, we just utter certain verses. So ideally, these verses, I should be feeling under the words in those verses. They shouldn't simply be words. They should be carrying meanings. The meanings should have been thought before coming to the prayer. Likewise, for those discussions, for example, I should be summarizing them for myself or any such thought process with a few words with which I will remember or update my memories about my truth, to remind myself, because I forget a lot. And I guess practically, how does this happen? Let's say somehow you end up in a different city, whatever, and you get disconnected from discussions for a certain time, let's say. Then, or when you go for a vacation for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, you realize that you start forgetting very quickly. I guess this is why this remembering part of it is spending the whole day with the 5 daily prayers, plus Messenger himself was making this practice of repeating this sort of supplication.
Zikr is absolutely like very important. But like what I understand from the text, author is suggesting that when you live your life, like he just gives examples and says like you can just make analogies with those other sciences and attainments. So he just opens up like a concept and saying that this is the way that you can live your life, or how you can approach the sciences, whatever you do, or even like it doesn't have to be necessarily, we just keep saying science, but it's at the end is really your experience and your observations. You're just giving the way, showing the way to establish a relationship with the rest of the, in a way that you are going to constantly reach or extract some sort of meaning and like abstraction of the qualities of the creator or the maker of the universe. I mean, it is easy to say, but like difficult to do. But so it must be in like every moment practice, rather than just like, oh, I learned the name of the just, and then I should just keep reminding myself that that's okay, but I'm not sure that that is the main purpose, like, of the text. He's rather saying that, like, now, like, in one experience, you like the name of justice may be more obvious than the name of the healer, let's say, and in another experience, it may be the name of, like, all merciful that you experience there. So, like, do you have that kind of mindset that you can constantly, like, establish that or reconnect yourself with your, like, sustainer through different names?
Yes, agreed. I was just saying how to practically do that. Because during the discussions, we are trying to attain this understanding, but I'm asking myself, why am I not practicing it in my daily life? And one of the answers that I find is because I don't remind myself about it. I forget it. I studied on Friday discussion. Next Friday comes and I say, what did we discuss last Friday? So it's not, over years, it slowly sinks in maybe, but still, 2 years later, I read the same text and I say, oh, I totally forgot this, for example. So how to make it more practical? This was what I was trying to say. How to keep it fresh.
Another point? Aisha, go ahead, please. Okay. And for example, medicine is a science and also an art. Medicine is a science and also an art. Engineering is not an art, is it? Interesting.
I guess it was obvious. This is why he didn't say.
Oh, okay. And for example, medicine is a science and also an art. Its final point and reality are based on the absolutely wise one's name of healer. And through observing that name's compassionate manifestations in the vast pharmacy of the earth, medicine finds its perfection and becomes reality. And through observing that name's compassionate manifestations in the vast pharmacy of the earth, medicine finds its perfection and becomes reality. So I guess this is the part, and through observing that name's compassionate manifestations in the vast pharmacy of earth. Yusuf, do you think this part also related to what you said earlier about raising your hand? Like he says, observing that name's compassionate manifestation, the healer, observing it in the universe, like seeing it everywhere. It's not only here, but I can see it everywhere. I can make this generalization of the name healer. Not only a person with an MD degree cuts me, but when I also see how the trees are healed through some, let's say, hormones, or I don't know, or how birds heal some other creatures by cleaning them.
Instead of saying that such and such medicine pill, let's say aspirin, healed me, again, which is something very much under the microscope, I am zooming it so much so that I say it's between me and this pill. But instead, if I see that the universe, the earth is a pharmacy, who is the pharmacist? Then this helps me to raise to a divine name. Otherwise, I get stuck in the medicine, or
yes,
molecular structure of the medicine.
And it becomes something local, like it becomes belong to you, your culture, or some person.
And everything becomes itself. This medicine heals this sickness, the other medicine heals that other sickness. So there's no healer. Healer is everywhere. It's not distributed to bits and pieces. The name healer disappears.
Yes. And through this, he says, by observing in the universe the name healer, medicine finds its perfection and becomes reality. Now you can talk about the healer. Now you can talk about it like a real medicine, rather than this pill curing things. You can talk about the idea of medicine. You can talk about the idea of the healing. Otherwise, it's just like a, let's say, how it is depicted in movies, at least, or in texts, that primitive cultures like see the medicine as a source of, like it's kind of a magic, right? Our way in which that we look at the medicine, even the contemporary medicine, modern medicine, it's like a magic thing. Like it happens, we learn things, but why, how, who cares? It just happens. We know how to mix things. And these become today's magicians. Nothing's changed. But when you see what they do, it's also there with trees, with birds. Even, in the space with stars and so on, now it becomes not a magic, but a quality name that you observe.
I guess we talked about this last week. Again, it's going to be a repetition. Also, we mentioned it today. But this being able to abstract or observing the pattern that is everywhere. This is what raising to a name would mean. And this is what is needed to be done. Otherwise, I get lost in the details or distributed to everything. So healer disappears as if heal becomes sort of, it's because of chance. Or it's because this molecule moves over there and fits into here and the problem is solved.
Yeah.
And Nursi is applying the same logic to finding guidance or being provided with food, for example. Because every baby is being provided with food. So if you just take it between baby and mother, then you don't see any provider anymore. But if you see that all creatures, all babies are being fed with mercy, then you say, oh, there is a merciful, everywhere he's acting in a different way, but still the same action being observed everywhere. Then it becomes, oh, merciful provider name appears to you. Otherwise, neither you see the mercy nor you see providing.
Or then, like you're going with the same logic, so when we are able to, for instance, infer some laws, like laws of gravity, that things, the patterns which repeat themselves, there's robust patterns in the universe, we see them and we use them, we name them when it comes to physics, when it comes to chemistry, whatever. But making a generalization, saying that, oh, there seems to be some patterns in the reality, there seems to be some laws to follow. The same thing applies to, let's say, the mercy I see. Right? I see mercy there, I see mercy here, I see mercy there. There seems to be a pattern there. So maybe there's a law of a mercy as well. Maybe there's a law of the provider. So when I do that, then this law-finding enterprise becomes a reality. Otherwise, it just stays as a shadow. So, like in general, regardless of what science we're talking about, but the idea of science itself, that there are some rules that you can follow. This idea should guide you finding the provider, the merciful one. You should see all these laws around you. Osman seems confused.
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Should I continue?
Ask your wife to see if she gives permission.
That's what I did. I looked at her. Like, I said, should I continue? And then look at her.
That's why I'm saying it. So the rest of the people
She nodded
is
her
aware
head.
that to the Almighty. the online people also evaluate that that's what you're doing.
And for example, the natural sciences, which discusses the reality of beings, I don't know what it means, discuss the reality of beings. What is the original version? Hakikat mevcudat, so it's not much different. But interesting, like a translation, it says natural sciences, right? In original, it says hikmetul eşya. So what does it mean? What science exactly is it referring
science,
to?
I will say.
Sorry?
I will say material science.
Material science? Makes sense.
Hikmetul eşya. I
Is
don't
it
know.
like physics, chemistry, biology, those kind of sciences?
Something.
Maybe. Okay, let's continue, which discuss the reality of beings through seeing the regulating, nurturing, supreme manifestations of Almighty God's, may His glory be exalted, name of all wise in things. So through seeing the regulating, nurturing, supreme manifestations of the all-wise one, or the name of all-wise in thing, in their benefits and advantages, and through attaining to the name all-wise, and being based on it, these sciences may contain true wisdom. Otherwise, they are either transformed into superstition, that's the interesting part. Otherwise, they are either transformed into superstition or become nonsense or open up the way to misguidance like naturalist philosophy. So Ashanov, you were right. He's also making connection to philosophy at then. Not the same way you did, but
it doesn't qualify under the same category.
otherwise they are either transformed into superstition or become nonsense or open up the way to misguidance. So I guess, Yusuf, this is your expertise, how they are superstition or nonsense. Would you like to enlighten us? No, how, let's say, the science of biology, for instance, becomes a superstition or nonsense. That's what I meant when I say it's your expertise.
In the superstitious person.
No.
I think the main theme of the paragraph that no one should study philosophy. That's what I got from it.
Should we burn books as well? But seriously, like, what do you understand from this? They're becoming superstition.
Evolution.
How is that superstitious act or explanation?
Because you just make up a story and say, hey, this is how it is. Everyone believes you.
This was very straightforward and simple.
Superstition, that's it.
But he says, otherwise they're either transformed into superstition or become nonsense. So there's a transform, like there's a part of them, as he was saying at the very beginning, there's an elevated aspect of them, which looks at these divine names. Without relying on these divine names, they transformed into superstition. So how would you apply this methodology to your example?
Well,
So what is the elevated reality behind these theories?
if someone tells me that water is keeping me alive, I guess I can call this a superstition, because that's not the water is by itself not doing anything. It's not causing my life. So if someone like a scientist comes and tells me water is how you stay alive, water is giving you life, then I would say that you're a superstitious person. And that's how I would use my methodology.
No, my question is, like, I'm assuming when a person, your imaginary person tells you that the water keeps you alive, he's not just, telling this based on nothing. Like one day he wakes up and say, oh, do you know what? The water keeps you alive. It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah.
So he sees something, maybe a shadow, and then tells you that water keeps you alive. And as far as I understood, I might be wrong, author tells me here that what your scientist friend said, actually there is a part of it, the aspect of it, if you look through the telescope of, let's say, belief, which looks to a divine name. Without reaching to this divine name, it becomes superstition. So in your example, for instance, water keeps you alive. This is the claim. Yes, it's a superstition, but what divine names it should have taken me before becoming a superstition? Like what I'm saying, you cannot just discard it. You cannot just say, you know what, whatever you are saying is just nonsense. Because you are losing this divine name as well by doing this.
By saying his interpretation is nonsense, I'm losing the divine name?
No, you should say that interpretation is nonsense.
Okay.
Yes. But what is the part of it which is not nonsense? You should find this as well, because this will take you the divine name.
I agree.
So in your example, for instance, how would you find the divine name when someone tells you the water keeps you alive? Or when you read all these articles and see the relationship between water and living things and whatever.
Like hypothetically, or?
Hypothetically, of course, yeah.
Okay, I'll just answer what I think water could teach me about divine names. When I feel very thirsty, if like I'm at a desert or something, or I'm fasting and I feel very thirsty, right there I just realize how weak I am, how needy I am, and how much I need this water. So I realize my impotence there, and then I realize, his creatorship, I guess, or how his power. And then after I drink the water, I realize, his lordship, his sustainership. I guess I realize meaning behind everything. And that's when I start seeing the divine names. And that's when it stops being superstition.
And I guess maybe we discussed it before as well, like when you see that this precious thing, life, is given to you through the hands of water, as what was the word, table tray, the tray bearer?
Tray bearer.
Yes, tray bearer. Which is like the life is somehow, the message of life is written in the water. Then you see the rain, you see the abundance of the treasury. You see how he sends down the life, the water that cleans you. And because through the life, this is the most precious things for you. And he says, I'm sending it in abundance. It keeps you satisfied, the rain. When you see the relation between life and water through your senses, right, it gives you security. It gives you satisfaction every time it rains. Giver of the life. He's sending life. Not that water gives you life, but just like the word book, it's not a book, but the word book gives you the message, right? The same thing. The water gives you the message of life, and every time it rains, it tells you the high, al-high, not the high, al-high, and the giver of the life. And through your senses, you know his name. I'm telling this because I guess the way he studies, the author studies, it's really interesting. Like, we usually have this tendency is dividing into camps. Like the people who doesn't know anything about the reality, and the people like us know everything about the reality. Yeah, of course. So whatever they say, it's just nonsense. We cannot benefit from, we should just abandon that. But he says, if it, it's, let's say, applicable reality, let's say evolution, whatever it is, relies on, even that may have an elevated aspect which looks at the divine name. Try to see it. If you cannot, just discard it. But try to see a divine name there. Just like, for instance, I'm just making up, right? The things, if really things are connected to each other, all these living beings, it tells me about my Creator. It tells me about the unity. It tells me about the oneness. If he just takes one cell organisms and from the same mold creates all these different things, it tells something about my Creator. So anyway, I find it interesting. Any comments? Shall I continue with the next paragraph? There's 3 examples for you. You may make analogies with these for the other sciences and attainments. So as Yusuf was saying, like we should give a name for the discussions or whatever, I guess we can apply this to everything. Like whatever we learn, whatever we study, we should try to find a divine name out of it so that we can keep it with us. Like, I don't know, you fix your car, try to see a divine name there. You study for your exam, try to see a divine name there. Not again, it doesn't have to be like one of the names out of these 99 names, whatever. A name, a describer, description? A description. A description of the Creator which manifested in the phenomena that you experienced. I'm just pausing so that, people can interfere. There's something today with people. Is it something we eat? Sorry?
So if, when, trying to find a name and everything, so if I'm having an experience that I don't necessarily see as good, there's ways I can find a name for that, or I can say something like the one who creates me in a sense that I don't like this. But I don't know, I guess it's just, it's more difficult to get creative with aspects or events and interactions that seem at the superficial level not so lovely.
So for instance, your example. Lovely.
Yeah, not so great.
Your example, mice, right? You see a mice and you start screaming, they are scared, you hate it, it's ugly, whatever, dirty, right? So you can live the experience like that. You say, I hate it, that's disgusting. You can see the same event as I like the clean things. I like cleanness. I don't like dirt.
So the privatization of certain qualities still point to some names, right?
What does privatization mean?
So the lack of, when I see the lack of something, that lack immediately shows what it's lacking. And that which it lacks is a description of a name that I am actually seeking.
I guess the easier way to say it would be...
Sorry,
No, not that it's complicated or whatever, no. Just for, regular laymen like myself and Mohammed Said, like when you experience something, you can use it to learn about yourself, first and foremost, which would automatically lead you to the learning about your Creator. Like when we are afraid of mice, we just be afraid of mice, and that's all. It ends there. We don't question ourselves, like, why I don't like it. What is it like, what I experience with this? We don't question. When you start questioning about yourself, and then you would realize that because it's dirty, I don't like dirty things. I like, clean things. And then cleanness probably will take you to your creator, who cleans everything in every, let's say, spring, with every winter.
And even when we look at mouse with that perspective, like a plumber, like the job that plumber does is a dirty job.
Yes.
But the job itself is cleaning. So, like, it might be a nasty sort of a job, but I mean, I like plumbers because I wouldn't like to be in field when things got wrong in the restroom. So I guess mouse or like these bugs, which they themselves are cleaners. They are there to clean because they show up in your house if there's a rotting thing in your house. So they were sent to cleanse what's already in there. So looking at it like this, then a mouse becomes the plumber or the cleaning agent that is sent to your
Let's
house.
use another example.
Everyone.
No, I guess this is a great example. Seriously.
Let's use snake.
We can look at everything like that though, because actually, as if Nursi is establishing this at the very beginning of his writings, in the second word, where he talks about what is your attitude when looking at existence. So would you like to look at it with a positive attitude or a negative attitude? So, because based on this choice, we are starting to extract meaning out of existence. Is it like something happens to you? It might be something like a traffic accident or something, let's say a newborn baby, whatever. So how am I going to approach this existing thing? Am I going to say it like, it's bad? I dislike it, it's bad, and then I try to find excuses to justify my initial state. Am I approaching it like this, or am I saying, well, okay, this happened, but let's analyze what's going on in here. Is it just based on this initial feeling? Is it truth? Because if I look at this book like this, a clean paper is dirtied by ink. So if I take it like this, I can just say that, yeah, you know what? Almost 30% is dirty. Then you can just go on and on saying how dirty it is, this paper became. But if you say, there's some sort of a pattern over this paper, maybe it's telling me something. Let me try to understand. Let me try to learn if I don't know how to read. So this initial attitude. Likewise, when it comes to mouse or an insect, I can say that I simply dislike it. And it's bad. That's simple. I don't go any further in there. But if I say, okay, yeah, in my condition, I am disliking it, but why? Where is this dislike coming from? What is this animal doing in here? Again, looking at raising my head and where this mouse or this insect is fitting in the big picture of existence, trying to understand why it is there, what is meant by it, then I guess a different reading starts to come out of it.
Maybe instead of, you said positive and negative attitude, so it sounds as if, it's a bias, like what is positive and so on. Maybe we can say like a self-centric, like everything starts and ends with you,
Yes.
or trying to see what is behind all of this. Like, so I guess one attitude, we always do that, right? Where I remember I said that when we were trying to discuss fear of God as well. Like there's one attitude that we try to describe things. I hate this, I like this is good, this is bad. This is one attitude. Or another attitude, we try to understand what things are. When you use this second attitude, when you see a mice, you say, why it is there? Why this animal, what is doing there? when you ask such questions, then you can reach a conclusion, as Yusuf was saying, like he's doing performing a duty there. So if you don't like to see it, do not leave something rotten there. If you leave it, it will come and do its duty. That's what it's created for. Of course, this is like a very simplistic way of saying it, but as this attitude changes, as you were saying, a lot. Self-centric, which means, I decide things, versus trying to understand what is given to you.
I have a question for Ayşenur. So, like, in the example of that animal, like, you have a dislike for the animal, but at the same time, there is an order, there is a balance, there is a life being manifested within the beings of that animal, right? So, how is your dislike prevents you to see the name of Hai, for example?
Because you kill it.
Why don't you see it?
So I mean, it's a very concrete example, right? Mice. I mean, mice are perfectly fine. I was thinking more things like if I feel a lack of mercy, or if I feel a lack of knowledge, like things that I can't concretely attach to other existing things, if you will. If I feel a lack of happiness or guidance or anything, right? That lack of what I'm experiencing doesn't seem to be something that has an existence in which a divine name can attach it to. Rather, it's this lack of existence where a divine name, at least in a positive sense, and by positive sense I mean active sense, attach itself to it. Because by its lack of, I can infer about it, but I can't experience like the divine name of lack of knowledge. It doesn't have a existence to it.
So like you're saying that, like, for example, I'm going through a depression and I don't see any kind of mercy in my like experience, but then like, so since I don't experience the mercy, or I don't see the mercy, then the state of depression is lack of mercy in a way. So how do I name that state? Is that what you're asking?
I don't know. I mean, not exactly either, but just, just like a specific, it doesn't even need to be like an overarching like depression sort of thing, right? It can just be like a very specific, if I have if I'm just in a certain state of being where I feel, again, let's say lack of knowledge, right?
I mean, you might be talking to a stupid person, for instance, right? Like you're talking to someone and...
If I'm just contemplating... No, not exactly. Not in reaction to something, but...
So is it like a traffic accident happens and the guy was drunk and you, may Allah protect, your car is totaled, you are safe.
Yeah, let's not kill someone.
But the car is totaled.
First of all, something about me.
So in such, if at that position is, I'm trying to understand your question, if it doesn't make sense to you, it just, you were going home, then you need to sleep in the hospital for the night or something like that. It's something very dark for you at that position. Is it that since momentarily you cannot see any meaning in it, lack of wisdom, lack of purpose, lack of mercy? So what am I going to attribute to the Creator? Is this the question?
I mean, okay, let's, I'm trying to make sense of my question as well, but let's use that example,
lack
right?
of knowledge there, right, in the question.
Best exemplified, right? So what am I representing now? What is the divine name in that lack of knowledge? The one that is knowledge. So let's go to the car example, right? In it, I can say that, I don't feel like I can't draw out. It's not a manifestation, or I have to be tricky here. I mean, I have to be careful here rather, because anyone can like attack on what I say. I don't want to say it's not a manifestation.
That's not a very good thing. If that is the feeling.
it's not well worded. Rather, it's a desire to be more conscious or aware of my word choice, since I know that word choice matters. Anyways, let me just try to get to the point. See, even that was just attack, Islam. Anyways, no, it wasn't. No, okay, so going to the car example, I can say that that the experience doesn't directly point to a manifestation of mercy, even though that's arguable. I'm sure someone can make an argument in which it is a manifestation of mercy, right? But at the forefront, at least, I can infer from that situation that, okay, like I have the need to be safe or secure, which can lead me to the need for a source that is, the all protector, etc., etc. But it's only from like this sense of negation, right? It's not a very a positive description, not positive as in like good or bad, but it's not it's based on something that doesn't have, like, I'm trying to reach a name in that instance because I see a lack of existence of something. And that just seems to me very indirect or deductive instead of just there.
No, I see.
Okay, do you want to now explain what I said because experts can explain things in simple ways. So I'm clearly not.
Are you serious?
No, I cannot. Probably I cannot explain it, but like the way I see, Asim has a comment. Maybe he's
say
another smile. Yeah.
So much pressure for us.
Fariha, she says lack of knowledge points to the fact that there is knowledge out there. What a beautiful realization. This enables one to realize the source of knowledge. It's easy said than done, she says. Okay. Then don't say things that are easy but not easy when it comes to doing. But no, the joke aside, yet I guess it's like it seems like yes, there's a difference. Like in one hand I see a tomato and I infer something about the tomato. In another hand, there's no tomato, and someone infers something about the tomato.
Right. I mean, even just like la ilaha, right? And then like there's a negative affirmation, and then there's a positive affirmation. But I guess what I'm saying is maybe like it isn't all positive affirmations. Yeah.
Can
you continue?
Go ahead.
Like one part of it, I guess. This is not a joke. This is what happens when you approach it from a philosophical perspective. Like when you take the car accident, no, seriously, not like a philosophy in that way, but like when you take the car accident and then put yourself aside the experience and try to see what's happening, what is connected to where is mercy, where is what wisdom, whatever. Sometimes you find it, sometimes you cannot find it. Sometimes wisdom is written on the ground, so you can see it easily. Sometimes it's hidden behind curtains, so you cannot see it. But instead, when you put yourself there in the accident, in which your arm is broken and aching, and when you start crying, seriously, when you start crying, then you find the merciful one. Because through crying, what you are doing is, oh merciful one, please stop my pain. This is what you do. So like through this experience, you know that there is a merciful one. So I guess when we say reaching a name, at least to me, it doesn't need to be that you look at the experience and you infer the name there. Sometimes you leave the experience and this experience takes you to a name. Like when you're scared, for instance. When you're scared, you know that there is someone that you can surrender. There is someone that can protect you. Otherwise, the experience of scaring just disappears. You said something better.
Getting scared. When you say scaring as a
Oh, okay. Getting scared is just lost. Unless you put yourself into the experience. The beloved ones dies. Where is the wisdom? Show me the wisdom. Right? Someone can come and explain to you, but by dying, it's actually she or he are freed from the duties in this world. I'm sure he's more he's happier. And through this experience, you learn this, you learn that, and so on. Yes, this is true. Probably it will come later on, these realizations. But when you leave the experience, when you start crying, when you say, I don't like it, then you go to the name who gives the life. Then you go to the name who resurrects, who keep things in safe. Through this experience, you know about all these names. Your desires, your needs becomes a prayer to this specific name. And from there, you reach the name and then make all these inferences later on. So I'm not, generalizing. I'm not saying that, always start with your emotions or whatever. But sometimes I'm saying that things becomes really complicated when we try to study them as an object, something outside us. When we try to objectify them, when we try to find some conceptual rules, and that's the reason I said philosophy, right? When we make them something outside us, things becomes complicated because we, change them. It's not the reality. The reality is my cry, my pain. This is the reality of the car accident. And then comes the rules about the physics and all this stuff that we can use for inference and see the wisdom.
And also, I guess, it very much happens that we don't see meaning behind things immediately. Practically speaking, this is how it is. Sometimes, as Quran gives the examples of messengers, sometimes we are in need of being thrown into water, being swallowed by a fish, and inside the belly of a fish, we realize something. So, and looking at the existence, for a fruit to ripen, winter, spring, summer passes, and at the end you get this ripened fruit. So the question is, am I having the hope and expectation that this fruit is going to ripen one day? Or from the very beginning, I say that this is just junk. Nothing comes out of this. Because if I am searching for it, then eventually searching means asking, making dua actually. Mm-hmm. So am I searching for it? If I do search, eventually things are being given to me. If I ask, then he responds. But if I don't ask, then no response. Because I am in a state where I just push things away. I don't want to see any meaning. I am intentionally either covering it up or pushing things away.
Let's have the concluding remark from you, Asmi.
It's not a concluding remark, but maybe concluding question. Going with the car example. So car is completely destroyed and we experience the name of the destroyer. So is your dilemma how that could be an beautiful name of the creator? Is that what the struggle is?
Not exactly.
Because destroying something, you don't necessarily immediately experience the love and the mercy, let's say. Mm-hmm. But you experience the dominant name is the name of destroyer rather than the most merciful, apparently.
And we need this name as well. Like I remember like making prayers, du'as, so that the destroyer will destroy something that I don't like, that I don't want to keep with me.
But he's destroying something that you want to keep. In that example, which is your car.
What I'm trying to say that is qualities that you come up with from this experience. That he destroys things. Let's say it's something you need as well. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.